We normally use 2 men on each cleaning job using the extraction method. There is nothing that would clean carpet better for our customers. Our job is to clean properly with quality first. Google Carpet Masters San Bernardino and give us a call, or go to carpetmasterssocal.com.
KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station, where your business comes first.
Financial. Man, we got a great show lined up for you today. What happened this weekend? Woo! I think everything's just going crazy. But we've got a really awesome guest coming on. His name is Will Estrada. He's an attorney for the parentalrights.org, and they're working to get a parental rights amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. And, oh, man, fantastic. So, I'm going to fall into what everybody else has been talking about a little bit, that Charlottesville thing and all that nonsense. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about tooting my own horn, our work at DFC Wealth Management. We've been up 17%. We're about 7% better than the markets. Our clients are really happy. Yeah, we're going pretty good. Today, the portfolios were up over 2%. I mean, one day, that's a big deal. But it's been great. And like I said, I love keeping the clients happy, and we're doing some good work for them. If you want to be one, give me a call, 310-777-6777. We'll talk about getting you all squared away financially. So big down day on Thursday last week. Did you buy the dip? Man, that was a good buying opportunity. So, well, that's enough of tooting my own horn. I guess I've got to talk politics, since everyone and their brother and mother and everybody else is talking about the tragedy in Charlottesville this weekend, and especially the tragedy for poor Heather Heyer. Oh, my goodness. Poor young lady lost her life. A senseless act of violence. And then that guy driving the car, James Alex Fields Jr., man, I hope the full extent of the law that man needs to face. He needs to face the criminal justice system and all of its fury and glory. So first, I'm going to lay some blame for all this nonsense where I think it rightfully lays, and that is squarely on the head of our state-run educational system in the U.S., because no one seems to know their history anymore. Not even the history of 70 years ago. I mean, I guarantee you, if your grandfather or great-grandfather who fought in World War II saw you marching in one of these rallies, either as an Antifa or as an alt-right, they would slap the living crap out of you. I hope I can say crap on it. Man, they would slap you silly for even thinking about doing something that ridiculous. And I'm sorry, gets me pretty fired up, man, because those men fought for the freedom against that kind of tyranny. And here their little grandchildren and great-grandchildren act like a bunch of idiots picking it back up. The wrong banners, boys. That's the wrong banners. And I'll explain this a little bit later. I'll try to calm myself down. But so let me just break it down for you. As I see it, there are 5 major players in this conflict. We have 1, the Antifa. Okay, so they're huge state leftist radicals. They advocate violence. Then we have 2, the alt-right. What are they? They're huge state fascist radicals who advocate violence. We have 3, the mainstream media. Now, the mainstream media, they're blaming conservatives. They're lumping the alt-right with Republicans, Christians. Basically, anybody who's not a leftist, the mainstream media is trying to lump into this alt-right nonsense. And then you have the political elite. And why are they the political elite? Because they want to maintain power. Now, a lot of people think, oh, they want to maintain power so they're powerful. No, they want to maintain power because it's financially expedient. Every major politician you know that has gone into politics without a cent comes out pretty darn wealthy for just doing nothing but politics. Sounds strange to you? Sounds strange to me, too. And then 5, we have what's left of the country, and that are the defenders of the constitutional republic. In other words, the rest of us, the people that believe in the Constitution, the people that defend the Constitution, the people that believe and swear to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And trust me, Antifa and alt-right are enemies of the Constitution because they want giant government to create their own giant government to come in and just take away everybody's freedom, especially the freedoms of people that aren't like them. So, sorry. And then there's one last player. I guess we have 6 players, and that's President Trump. Sometimes he seems like he knows what he's doing, and sometimes he fails so miserably. He seems so far out of his depth that he almost appears to be moronic. Moronic. He makes some good decisions, some good moves every now and then he does something really stupid. I got to hand it to him, though. Today, he made a good move, a little bit late, and he needs to be just the beginning of what he does. But he did condemn the violence, the racism, the white supremacy, and that is a condemnation that needs to be made over and over again. But he gets blamed for everything, right? And let me tell you this, if he went away today, none of your problems would be solved. So I'm going to go back to education a little bit and see if I can elucidate some of this stuff. We got the Constitution, and in it are freedoms that are expressed. And it's not the Constitution that gives the freedoms. In case you didn't know that, probably didn't read it, but that's not it. The freedoms it talks about are endowed by your Creator, according to the words of the Constitution. In other words, the freedoms that we have and enjoy in this country were given to us by Almighty God, which we ought to be defending and protecting. Freedoms like what? Freedom of religion, to believe according to the goodness of your conscience. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, to gather together peacefully, a freedom of self-protection, or in other words, the right to bear arms, freedom of a trial by jury, freedom from the assumption of guilt. In other words, you're innocent until proven guilty. All those things, we kind of just, maybe somebody like me starts talking about it and you yawn. But, if you didn't have that stuff, you'd be living in a world like, well, what? Nazi Germany or the USSR, where there were absolutely no freedoms for anybody. And they didn't care if you were white or not. They just cared that you didn't believe what they believed in. And guess what? You happened to you. You get to go to a concentration camp. So please, all those freedoms are protected and defended by oath against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And what has given us and protecting those freedoms has given us the most prosperous, the most generous, the most free country in the history of the entire world. Our ancestors could only dream of a life of our freedoms. So please, please, please don't screw it up now. Learn your Constitution, learn your system of government, learn your system of economics, and learn what it means to be a responsible citizen in a constitutional republic. Specifically, a constitution of freedom as wonderful as ours. And while you're at it, while you're educating yourself on what you've been the beneficiary of for the last 200 years, learn the horrors perpetrated by huge state governments of fascists and leftists like Germany and Russia, before you try to adopt their failed terror states for yourselves. Be a defender of our constitutional republic. Live in peace. Live in love. Live in freedom. And what I got to say about that is, may God bless the United States of America. Because, man, if we needed his help anytime, we need his help now. So, yeah, was kind of shocking. I mean, I just couldn't actually believe what I was seeing. And it just it tends to make me think that we've got to do a better job in education. We've got to do a better job of educating history. We have a phenomenon in our culture called cultural amnesia, where the preceding generation fails to teach their children and their grandchildren how it is they came to be. I mean, in cultures that existed on oral tradition, ancient cultures, they passed down those traditions for hundreds of years by word of mouth before they even had systems of writing. And the cultures would remain intact. The only thing that would make them dissolve or fall apart was the loss of population, either through war or through famine or some kind of disease. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But what I'm saying now is you've got to teach your children what it means to be an American, what it means to have a constitution of freedom, and learn to live, to defend the freedoms that God has given you. This is Donald Carpenter with the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show. May God bless the United States of America. I'll be right back.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM.
Some combinations were just meant to go together. Chips and salsa, refrigerator and freezer, the internet, and those cute little cat videos. At State Farm, there's another combination meant to go together, home and auto, as in combining your home and auto insurance with one agent, which leads to another combination, saving dollars and cents. Your State Farm agent, the DeSalvo Insurance Agency, is here to help life go right. Combine home and auto and see how much you can save. For more information, call the DeSalvo Insurance Agency at 310-553-0241 in Beverly Hills, or find him on the web at BillDeSalvo.com. That's BILLDISALVO.com.
Hi, this is Donald Carpenter. You know, I've written a pretty interesting book. It's called The Family Man's Stock Market Volatility Survival Guide, How to Defend Your Family in Any Economy. To pick up a copy of The Family Man's Stock Market Volatility Survival Guide, go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or the website FamilyManSMBSG.com.
We want to share a secret with you. There's a new and revolutionary way to bring the Earth's most effective organic plant extracts directly to your skin in a pure and healthy way. Lule Botanicals utilizes a breakthrough process called supercritical plant extraction. Your skin will radiate vitality and health like never before. No one wants to kiss an alligator face. Now they won't have to. Visit us on the web at www.lulebotanicals.com. That's LULEIBOTANICALS.com. To get your 20% discount, use promo code LLB20.
Dr. Tatsuo Hirano asks, why suffer and ignore your pain and illness? Stop it before it gets out of control. Acupuncture is like fresh air, revitalizing your body and mind. Dr. Tatsuo Hirano, renowned acupuncturist to the stars and world-class performing artists, will help you get back to optimum health. To explore the healing arts of Oriental medicine, call Dr. Hirano at 818-244-2287. The first 20 callers will receive 10% off their first visit. Just say Donald Carpenter sent you.
Berndorf Law Offices, located in Los Angeles, is an employment, counseling, and litigation boutique law firm for California employers and executives. Employment laws change almost daily, and penalties for noncompliance are substantial. If you're an employer in Southern California and need assistance navigating the waters of employee relations, legal aspects of human resources management, or need defense against a lawsuit, our lawyers can help. Find us on the web at berndorflaw.com. That's BIRNDORFLAW.com. Or on Twitter at Law4CA Employers.
This is Donald Carpenter with the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show, back with a really awesome guest on the line. His name is Will Estrada. How you doing, Will?
Doing well, Donald. Great to be on.
Oh, great. Fantastic. So, I was just doing a little rant about the weekend's, tragedy in Charlottesville and talking about, all that nonsense going on with Antifa and the alt-right. And one thing I failed to mention, and I want my listeners to know this before we go on to your stuff, is that those movements are tiny. The media is making a big, giant deal out of how big they are. They're not that big at all. There are a lot more constitutional defenders of the Constitution, regular Americans, than there are these little tiny groups that are getting all this press. So into that. Anyway, Will, so, you've got this interesting story. You're a graduate of homeschool from Pennsylvania, but you've gone on to become a lawyer, and a quite successful one. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about this, because I don't know a lot about the homeschooling movement, or that's your job. Go ahead.
Well, happy to talk about it. Homeschooling has been around for centuries, but in our country in recent times, as we saw many of the problems in the 60s and the 70s come into focus in our public schools, more and more parents began looking at homeschooling again as an option. And that's when we saw the rebirth of the modern homeschooling movement. In the late 60s, early 70s, you had kind of two groups of people who were choosing to educate their children at home. You had the conservative religious types, mainly Christians, in the late 60s, early 70s.
Right.
And then you had some of the more non-traditional, the crunchy granola, I like to call them, more the liberal side of people, and together they said, we want to choose the best education for our children. Homeschooling has grown over the past 40 years. The U.S. Department of Education estimates that there are now around 2 million homeschooled students in the United States, about 3.5% of the school-age population.
Well, that's amazing, and I appreciate you letting me know all that, because that is a topic that, I consider myself like a kind of a super nerd, but I'm not super in that area. So you work now for a group, HSLDA, and you're the it says senior counsel there,
Well, I'm the director of federal relations for the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. So I, as an attorney and as the director of this department, I make sure that homeschooling is protected at the federal level and left alone. We don't want money from the federal government. We don't want vouchers. We don't want support. We just want to be able to continue to have that God-given liberty of moms and dads, loving parents, to choose the best education for their children. And then I also am the director of government relations for parentalrights.org, as we're working on a parental rights amendment to the United States Constitution.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. That's the topic that really got me excited. So apparently there has been and is ongoing, and perhaps worldwide, even in other Western countries, an attack on parental rights. And I understand from an interview that you gave that I was listening to earlier last week that it's part of a UN treaty. Maybe you can elaborate on all that.
Absolutely. So the good thing we have as citizens of the United States is that past, pretty much since the founding of our country, parental rights have been strongly protected. There were 3 cases in the 1900s. You had Meyer versus Nebraska, Pierce versus Society of Sisters, and then Wisconsin versus Yoder in the 1970s. And those 3 U.S. Supreme Court cases established that parental rights are a fundamental right. So the highest type of protection afforded our God-given liberties under our constitutional system. Since then, however, since those very strong decisions, we've seen what I like to term canaries in the mine shaft. They're starting to sing. We still have strong protections of parental rights in our country. I mean, if you are a parent in the United States, you pretty much have the strongest protections anywhere on earth, legally speaking. But we are seeing these concerning cases crop up. We saw a few years ago the case of Justina Pelletier, a young woman in Massachusetts who, because another hospital disagreed with her doctor and her parents, they instituted proceedings. They removed her from their parents' custody. And for several months, the case went through the courts. She got worse and worse health-wise. And
Right.
finally, she and her parents were able to prevail. We've seen in the case of the 2000 case of Troxel versus Granville, it was a U.S. Supreme Court case, a complicated set of facts that came out of Washington State regarding grandparents suing for visitation. A divorce was involved.
Right.
The mom didn't want the grandparents coming in, that sort of thing. And we saw a case where the Supreme Court splintered badly. And for the first time, they seemed to take a step back from those strong cases of the 1900s, saying that parental rights are a fundamental right.
Right.
And then we're seeing international threats to homeschooling and to parental rights specifically. And that's most recently come up in the case of Charlie Gard.
Right.
That was all over the news. It was a heartbreaking
Oh,
situation
absolutely.
where little Charlie's mom and dad in England wanted to be able to take him using their own money to seek experimental treatment. The court said, no, we don't think this is in Charlie's best interests. You can't. And his mom and dad had to sit and watch him die. Now, thankfully, we don't have that yet in our country. We have
Right.
strong protections for parental rights. That sort of thing doesn't happen, but we are worried that it could. And that's why
Right.
we are working to try and amend the Constitution to put the black letter law that parental rights are a fundamental right into the text of the U.S. Constitution.
Right. That's great. You know, when man, I was watching it, such agony over that Charlie Gard situation, and I had a lot of friends were asking, well, how can that happen? How come the parents don't have authority? I said, man, just thank God for the Brexit we went through in 1776, because we could be living under that same kind of, authoritarian rule that allows the state to come in and decide what's best for the kids.
Well, that's absolutely the case. In our country right now, it's a level playing field. Obviously, we want the government to be able to come in if people are abusing their rights, if they're hurting their kids, if they're
Right.
abusing or neglecting them.
Right.
But there's a level playing field. The government has to show evidence. Parents can sue, and they oftentimes can and do win in these types of cases against the government when they can show that, they love their kids and they're taking good care of them. England doesn't have that. There's not a level playing field. It is tilted against the parents. And what we're trying to do with the introduction of the Parental Rights Amendment, if we are successful,
Right.
is to then just make sure that for generations to come, there remains that level playing field where parents can take on the full weight of the federal, state government and win when they show that they love their kids, that they're providing good education or treatment or care or whatever it is, and they can have that level playing field to continue to make the decisions of what's best for their children.
Right. So do you see policy initiatives or actual legislation coming forward that would diminish the rights of parents here in the States?
Well, there haven't been as many threatening legislative bills, statutes that have been on the radar screen here in the United States, at least not in the recent time. We were very concerned about some of the United Nations treaties
Right.
that the previous administration tried to have the Senate ratify. Thankfully, those were all defeated. On the positive side, though, we are saying now's the time to act. None of us, Donald, wants to wait until our parental rights or any of our freedoms are stripped away. We need to act now as we see the threats on the horizon before they become so dangerous that we have a tragedy like the Charlie Gard situation here in our country.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, the one thing that really stuck out, I mean, it's a little bit different topic, but it still stuck out in my mind was, hey, welcome to, socialized medicine, because here is somebody else taking full responsibility for the care of someone in your family when you have the capacity, or making decisions over over the parents' will and wishes, even when at the very end they had an opportunity to come to the United States, which I thought was such a tragedy.
And the good thing, that bill was introduced to allow Charlie's parents and Charlie to give them lawful permanent residency status in the United States to seek medical care. That went through on a bipartisan vote. Every single Democrat, every single Republican in the House Appropriations Committee voted for it. And so as we're looking at such a difficult task of amending the Constitution, it's only happened 27 times in our country's history, we think it's a very optimistic sign that it's a bipartisan issue,
Right.
protecting parental rights. Democrats have kids, Republicans have kids, conservatives, progressives all have kids, and all of us want to make sure that we can pass on our values, that we can teach our children, that we can care for them, that we can make those decisions of what's best for them. And so that's why we're saying now's the time to act. Contact your senators, contact your U.S. Congressperson, and ask them to support the Parental Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, we're the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show. We're constantly talking about building community, starting with your family, defending your family, starting with your wife and kids, and, just doing everything you possibly can to live a life of sacrifice for those in your family so that, they can benefit from your knowledge, your education, your training. And man, I just hate the thought that anything might threaten that, especially from an overreaching governmental position. So, man, I've got to tell you, I'm really grateful that you guys are on this, because it sounds like a really wonderful protection in our Constitution.
That's our goal, and it's something that we've got a lot of information on. We've been working on this for several years now, and if people want to find out more, read the text of the proposed amendment to the Parental Rights Amendment. Read it. You can read it at parentalrights.org. find out how you can get involved, because that's all we need right now. Just people to stand up and say, not on our watch. We want to make sure that parental rights are protected for generations to come.
Yeah, and if we got it into the Constitution, it wouldn't be on a few generations' watches. That'd be fantastic. Hey, listen, we're going to take a break, but I want you to come right. Hang on, we'll get right back to you. I got.
I'll be here.
Yes, sir. Will Estrada on the line. Oh, what a great conversation we're having. Donald Carpenter with the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show. We will be right back.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM.
Some combinations were just meant to go together. Chips and salsa, refrigerator and freezer, the internet, and those cute little cat videos. At State Farm, there's another combination meant to go together, home and auto, as in combining your home and auto insurance with one agent, which leads to another combination, saving dollars and cents. Your State Farm agent, the DeSalvo Insurance Agency, is here to help life go right. Combine home and auto and see how much you can save. For more information, call the DeSalvo Insurance Agency at 310-553-0241 in Beverly Hills, or find him on the web at BillDeSalvo.com. That's BILLDISALVO.com.
Hi, this is Donald Carpenter. You know, I've written a pretty interesting book. It's called The Family Man's Stock Market Volatility Survival Guide, How to Defend Your Family in Any Economy. To pick up a copy of The Family Man's Stock Market Volatility Survival Guide, go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or the website FamilyManSMBSG.com.
We want to share a secret with you. There's a new and revolutionary way to bring the Earth's most effective organic plant extracts directly to your skin in a pure and healthy way. Lule Botanicals utilizes a breakthrough process called supercritical plant extraction. Your skin will radiate vitality and health like never before. No one wants to kiss an alligator face. Now they won't have to. Visit us on the web at www.lulebotanicals.com. That's LULEIBOTANICALS.com. To get your 20% discount, use promo code LLB20.
Dr. Tatsuo Hirano asks, why suffer and ignore your pain and illness? Stop it before it gets out of control. Acupuncture is like fresh air, revitalizing your body and mind. Dr. Tatsuo Hirano, renowned acupuncturist to the stars and world-class performing artists, will help you get back to optimum health. To explore the healing arts of Oriental medicine, call Dr. Hirano at 818-244-2287. The first 20 callers will receive 10% off their first visit. Just say Donald Carpenter sent you.
Berndorf Law Offices, located in Los Angeles, is an employment, counseling, and litigation boutique law firm for California employers and executives. Employment laws change almost daily, and penalties for noncompliance are substantial. If you're an employer in Southern California and need assistance navigating the waters of employee relations, legal aspects of human resources management, or need defense against a lawsuit, our lawyers can help. Find us on the web at berndorflaw.com. That's BIRNDORFLAW.com. Or on Twitter at Law4CA Employers.
This is Donald Carpenter with the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show, and I've got a great guest on, Will Estrada. He's lobbying for the Parental Rights Act amendment to the United States Constitution. And I just want to pick right up where we left off. Will, can you tell our audience where they can read about you and your work and the proposed amendment?
Absolutely. So parentalrights.org is where our listeners can find out more about the Parental Rights Amendment. And some of the folks here might be wondering, okay, what's in the Parental Rights Amendment? And so it's the main focus are the first two sections. Section 1 says the liberty of parents to direct the upbringing, education, and care of their children is a fundamental right. And that's pulled from those three cases, Meyer versus Nebraska, Pierce versus Society of Sisters, Wisconsin versus Yoder. The three powerful Supreme Court cases in the 1900s that enshrined the fundamental right of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children as part of our nation's framework. And then Section 2 of the Parental Rights Amendment says the parental right to direct education includes the right to choose as an alternative to public education, private, religious, or home schools, and the right to make reasonable choices within public schools for one's child. So that's essentially the heart of the Parental Rights Amendment. We encourage you to go to parentalrights.org to find out more information, read the text for yourself, and then if you're interested, find out ways to get involved.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I encourage all of our listeners to get involved because this is an important issue. Rights, freedoms in general, given our current climate, and specifically those of parents. Now, I wanted you to, maybe, if you would, elaborate a little bit on the UN Treaty and how that's been sort of encroaching onto, the legal framework in the United States.
Oh, absolutely. So this problem started quite a while back. In 1989, the United Nations General Assembly finalized a treaty called the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And the danger about the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, one of the first ones is that it would remove sovereignty from the U.S. Over many issues concerning children, parents, families, and put it into the hands of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats at the United Nations. But the heart of the danger is found in one of the provisions, the central provision of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which says that in all issues concerning children, the best interests of the child shall be the primary consideration.
Now that sounds noble.
It sounds like a great thing until you look at what it actually does.
Yes.
In our country, the courts have held consistently that parents are deemed to be the people who make the decisions of what's best for their child.
Right.
But under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, it's the government, it's courts, it's government officials who make the decisions of what's best for a child. And that's why if you went and read a lot of the commentary in England, there were law professors, there were attorneys, they were published in newspapers like The Guardian, and they all said the courts got it absolutely right. Courts are required to listen to what parents say, just kind of hear what they say, but then the courts are the ones who we have entrusted to decide what is actually best for a child. And under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, under the international law that has followed it, it would change this from parents making the decisions of how to raise, care, nurture, educate their children to the government making those decisions. It's a deep distrust of moms and dads, of ordinary people, and placing that trust in the hands of government.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me how wonderful and noble and even innocuous some of these ideas can sound on the surface. Oh, it's all for the rights of the children. And then you dig down just a little bit under the surface and you find out it's not your right anymore. It's not your freedom anymore. It's somebody's, an overarching bureaucracy making a choice for you. And then you look at a case like Charlie Gard, and I'm sure there are others, where, man, it just looks like that was the worst thing possible.
You know, that's absolutely the case. The good news is in 1989, of course, the UN General Assembly finalized the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And then in 1995, Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State, she signed on to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on behalf of the Clinton administration. Mm-hmm. We saw at that time Hillary Clinton, then First Lady, came out with a huge splash of, we need to ratify this treaty. Wow. But thankfully, moms and dads, radio hosts, freedom-loving Americans stood up and said, not so fast. There's a lot of problems to this treaty, and it's actually never been sent to the U.S. Senate for ratification. Now, we had a close call in 2012. There was a similar treaty called the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Right. And in some ways, it was even harder to fight this one because everyone said, what? You must not care about people with disabilities. But it had those same problems. It said in all issues concerning children with disabilities, the best interests of the child shall be the primary consideration. Again, under the framework of the treaty, removing those decisions about how to raise, how to care for a child with disabilities, and placing them into the hands of government, not parents. And all I have to tell people now, is look at what happened with Charlie Gard.
Yeah.
The parents loved that little boy despite his disabilities. They said, we want to take him and try and get as much good care. We love him regardless of how he is, and we want to try and save his life. And the court said, no, we're not going to let you. There were other problems with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It required every child with a disability to be registered with the government at the moment of birth. And that's just concerning, I think.
Right.
I think every parent would say, why is the federal government trying to get this data on our child?
Absolutely.
And that treaty, the Obama administration did sign it and then sent it to the U.S. Senate for ratification. And they pushed hard for the Senate to ratify it. And in December of 2012, a lame duck Senate, they held a vote and came 5 votes short of ratifying the treaty. Our founders put a very wise provision into the U.S. Constitution, which says that treaties need to be ratified by the Senate by a 2/3 vote. And so actually 62 senators voted for this UN treaty on the rights of persons with disabilities, but it required 67 votes. So it failed by 5 votes in a great victory for parental rights, for freedom, for our sovereignty in our nation, or else I am convinced we would be seeing today cases like Charlie Gard's in our country.
Yeah, it's always, it feels like there's always something sneaky going on like behind the curtains over there. I don't. Oh my goodness, it's the language is so soothing. Oh, it's best interest for the child, and then it turns out that but you don't get to make that decision. It's like, oh my goodness, it's just a lot of what you're saying is eye-opening to me, and it's maybe the second or third time I've heard it in the last month. And I'm surprised that I live in the dark like this. But I wanted to get you on as soon as I heard your good message and have you talk about this proposed amendment to the Constitution, because I think it's an amazing thing for the defense of families.
Well, that's why we're actually working on this amendment. We've been successful. Freedom has been successful in the past in beating back these attempts to roll back parental rights, but all it takes is one of these treaties to get through. If you have a bad election, if the wrong people get elected, if they're in leadership, and then it could have decades of danger and threats to our system of government. So that's why we're saying we need to put the text of parental rights as fundamental into the black and white of the Constitution. That way, even if one of these UN treaties snuck by down the road, even if we had a bad Supreme Court decision, we would have it in the text of the Constitution. It would be there in black and white, just like the Second Amendment or the First Amendment. Yep. Can you imagine if we didn't have the First Amendment for free speech and religious freedom, the restrictions we would have on those two fundamental principles of American liberty, or the Second Amendment?
Sure.
If we didn't have the right of the people to keep and bear arms in the text of the Constitution, we'd be like most of the European countries, I'm convinced of. Yep. And so it's time. Parental rights are in some ways even more important. It's passing on to the next generation freedom itself. And it's time to put that into the text of the Constitution.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners again how they can get a hold of you, read all of your good articles, and find out more about this proposed amendment.
We're excited to announce that the Parental Rights Amendment has been introduced into the U.S. Constitution right before the August recess came up. It was introduced as Senate Joint Resolution 48, an amendment by Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, and it was signed on with 5 original co-sponsors: Marco Rubio from Florida, Roy Blunt from Missouri, Jim Risch from Idaho, Chuck Grassley from Iowa, and Johnny Isakson from Georgia. So we've got 6 senators who've co-sponsored the amendment, and we are aggressively pushing for co-sponsors. So go to parentalrights.org, read the resources we have about the Parental Rights Amendment, read the text for yourself. It's only 6 short paragraphs, so easy reading, and then call your 2 U.S. senators and urge them to co-sponsor Senate Joint Resolution 48, the Parental Rights Amendment. And then we're excited to announce we'll be announcing the companion bill in the House of Representatives just after Labor Day, as soon as the House of Representatives returns.
Absolutely fantastic. Hey, it's been great having you on, and I really appreciate you explaining this for our listeners and helping us here in the United States to continue the fight for freedom and maintaining it in our country. We know that you talked about the First Amendment, you talked about the Second Amendment. I mean, most of the amendments have been under attack, one form or the other, and thank you for being out there and doing this good work to protect the rights of parents.
It's a privilege, Donald. Thank you for what you're doing to get the word out.
Oh, yeah. Well, you take care. Hey, we're going to talk a little bit about the how to get my book, which talks a lot about this stuff, and it's called the Family Man Stock Market Volatility Survival Guide. How to defend your family in any economy, and I talk a lot in that book about the Constitution, defending the Constitution, standing up for freedom, standing up for your family. And here at the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show, we are all about that. We're so glad we had Will on. And this is Donald Carpenter with the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show. We'll be right back.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM.
Some combinations were just meant to go together. Chips and salsa, refrigerator and freezer, the internet, and those cute little cat videos. At State Farm, there's another combination meant to go together, home and auto, as in combining your home and auto insurance with one agent, which leads to another combination, saving dollars and cents. Your State Farm agent, the DeSalvo Insurance Agency, is here to help life go right. Combine home and auto and see how much you can save. For more information, call the DeSalvo Insurance Agency at 310-553-0241 in Beverly Hills, or find him on the web at BillDeSalvo.com. That's BILLDISALVO.com.
Hi, this is Donald Carpenter. You know, I've written a pretty interesting book. It's called The Family Man Stock Market Volatility Survival Guide, How to Defend Your Family in Any Economy. To pick up a copy of The Family Man Stock Market Volatility Survival Guide, go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or the website FamilyManSMBSG.com.
We want to share a secret with you. There's a new and revolutionary way to bring the Earth's most effective organic plant extracts directly to your skin in a pure and healthy way. Lule Botanicals utilizes a breakthrough process called supercritical plant extraction. Your skin will radiate vitality and health like never before. No one wants to kiss an alligator face. Now they won't have to. Visit us on the web at www.lulebotanicals.com. That's LULEIBOTANICALS.com. To get your 20% discount, use promo code LLB20.
Dr. Tatsuo Hirano asks, why suffer and ignore your pain and illness? Stop it before it gets out of control. Acupuncture is like fresh air, revitalizing your body and mind. Dr. Tatsuo Hirano, renowned acupuncturist to the stars and world-class performing artists, will help you get back to optimum health. To explore the healing arts of Oriental medicine, call Dr. Hirano at 818-244-2287. The first 20 callers will receive 10% off their first visit. Just say Donald Carpenter sent you.
Berndorf Law Offices, located in Los Angeles, is an employment, counseling, and litigation boutique law firm for California employers and executives. Employment laws change almost daily, and penalties for noncompliance are substantial. If you're an employer in Southern California and need assistance navigating the waters of employee relations, legal aspects of human resources management, or need defense against a lawsuit, our lawyers can help. Find us on the web at berndorflaw.com. That's BIRNDORFLAW.com. Or on Twitter at Law4CA Employers.
It's Donald Carpenter. I'm back. Family Man's Faith and Finance Show. Man, wasn't that a great guest? Yes, sir. Will Estrada, working on a amendment to the U.S. Constitution that guarantees the protection of parental rights. Oh, I just love the sound of that. It's awesome. And you can find it on the web at parentalrights.org and read 6 short paragraphs and find out all about it. Encourage your senators, your representatives to get this thing into the Constitution so we don't have to have a bunch of Charlie guards in our country, because that would just be a mess. Anyway, so, oh man, Now, I'm fired up today. There's a lot of good stuff to talk about. I'm going to read my disclaimer and we're going to talk about the markets. How about that? So, anything I say about the markets and investing is presented for informational purposes only. The information I give is certainly not a recommendation to buy or sell any security or investment. The information I give is not legal advice, it's not tax advice, it's not accounting advice, it's not investment advice. All investments have risk, all investments can go up and down in price. You need to consult your own financial professional before investing. And if you want me to be that financial professional, give me a call, 310 777 6777. So, what happened last week? Two big things. On Monday, the S&P 500, that's the 500 largest companies in the United States, that index closed at an all-time closing high of 2,480.95. And then promptly on Thursday, the second big thing to happen is that the S&P dropped an entire 1.6%, and it was the first down week in the last 7. So what goes up must come down. But it wasn't just the S&P 500. It was the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ closed down 1.5% on the week to be at a positive 16.2% year to date. The Russell 2000 closed down 2.7% on the week to be up 1.3% year to date. And the Dow closed down last week 1.1% to be up 10.6% year to date. S&P 500 was down 1.4% on the week to be down 9%, to be up 9% year to date. Second quarter earnings season is in. 91% of the companies have reported in the S&P 500, and earnings growth is up over 10%. So what's working in this environment of high growth and falling inflation has been technology companies, biotech, consumer discretionary, and housing. In case you hadn't heard me say this before, we're in a raging bull market. And if you need some indication or some proof that inflation is still falling, the CRB index, the commodities index with 19 different commodities in it, was down 0.6% last week, but it's been down 6.7% year to date. Oil, West Texas crude was down 1.6% last week, down 14.4% year to date. Energy stocks represented by the ETF, Exchange Traded Fund, XLE, were down 2.6% last week, down 15.1% year to date. So, yeah, inflation is falling. Last Friday, we did have a small acceleration in inflation, and the CPI report up 0.1% to 1.7% year over year. And that's the first acceleration in 4 months, but I expect inflation to continue lower through the year. In addition, I'd be inclined to stay away from European and Chinese stocks because those economies are weakening on a secular basis. So cyclically, they're coming down, in my opinion. And so here's my question: did you buy the dip last week? Because that was a great buying opportunity. We're in a raging bull market. I expect some chop through the summer and even through this week, because we've got the situation in Charlottesville and the aftermath of that. North Korea, we've got that kook ball over there making threats. Venezuela's got some of its problems, and we're starting to get involved in that. We got the Fed minutes, our own Federal Reserve Bank, that comes out this week. Jackson Hole is coming up. We've got a debt ceiling debate coming up in our own government. NAFTA renegotiation is on the table this week. China could be retaliatory and crack down for some of our activities with them. And like I said before, the Chinese and EU country economies are slowing. Today was a quiet day for reporting. Tuesday, we have retail sales, Empire State Manufacturing, import and export prices, Red Book, business inventories, housing market index, and Treasury internal capital. Wednesday, we've got mortgage applications, housing starts, Atlanta Fed and business. Did you know that housing is going gangbusters around the country? That's pretty good. We have the EIA petroleum report, FOMC, Federal Open Market Committee meeting. Minutes coming out. That's all Wednesday. Thursday, the big day, is jobless claims. Philadelphia Fed, Outlook survey, industrial production, Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index, e-commerce retail sales, leading indicators report, EIA natural gas, Fed balance sheet, money supply. Friday, we have consumer sentiment and Baker Hughes rig count. So a lot of good reports coming out this week. Pick your spots. Don't buy at the all-time highs. But buy the dips and sell the rips, as they say in Wall Street. Good luck out there. So I'm going to move on a little bit to a topic near and dear to my heart called making babies. So, you know, the baby boomer population was the biggest and most prosperous population ever in the history of the United States. It started in the mid-1940s, and it went on until the mid-1960s, almost 20 years. Almost 80 million babies were born in that population boom, and it was the greatest economic expansion in the history of the world. However, millennials, who are defined as those between ages 18 and 34 in 2015, now number 75.4 million, and they're surpassing the baby boomers, who are now at 74.9 million. And why? Because baby boomers are getting old and they're dying off. Oh, I'm one of those guys. And a lot of current science fiction and stories and movies are focused on this bleak dystopian future wherein people can't have babies anymore. And we asked to wonder, was there any truth to that? So the statistics are showing us that the projections are that between 2050 and 2100, the combined populations of Asia, Europe, and Latin America are expected to shrink by hundreds of millions of people. By 2076, children are expected to become rarities. But to keep populations stable in industrialized countries, the fertility rate needs to be 2.1 babies per woman. But we're well below that here in the United States. We're at 1.87 babies per woman, reaching our lowest level last year. Our lowest level in history for babies being born was in 2016. In Italy, in 2015, there were only 488,000, sorry. In Italy, in 2015, there were only 488,000 babies born. That's the lowest since the founding of the country, Italy. And you think of the spicy Italians and what's going on over there, I don't know. But in Japan, their population is just almost at a standstill. It's 1.4 babies per woman. And their population is not only getting smaller, but it's becoming older. It's becoming a population of old people over there in Japan. And it's not any different in China and Taiwan, which is they're 1.21 babies per woman, and it's even worse in China. There's a theory called the demographic transition, and it's propounded by Dr. Ray Dionian of the University of Iowa. And he says as income increases, people have fewer children. As longevity increases, people have fewer children. And as urbanization increases, people have fewer children. And he says there's 5 factors that they started with farming families, and the deaths equaled births. And then the rise of public health and hygiene, vaccinations and clean water, and fewer people were dying. And then contraception and urbanization, and education for women, and then fewer people were born and less were dying. And India is kind of like that now, and China. Iran may already be out of that situation. And then the 4th stage is that there's no more reason to have children other than personal reasons. And that's when the death rates and the birth rates turn low. And then 5, people rarely have children, and there are more senior citizens than there are people. They said the solution is immigration. And I'm like, wait a second. If you look at the abortion numbers worldwide, it's not actually funny. That we had 51.8 million people killed, babies died since 79 in the United States. 51 million people killed in abortion since 1970. Worldwide, the number killed since 1980 is 1.46 billion. It's cultural amnesia. You know, God has a better plan. Genesis 1:27-28. God created man in his own image. The image of God created he them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. If you want good economies, you got to have a lot of people to run those. Hey, this is Donald Carpenter with the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show. I look forward to having you back. Become a sponsor. Go to generosity.com. Get my book. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Hey, I'm now on iHeartRadio. This is Donald Carpenter with the Family Man's Faith and Finance Show. Come on back next week.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Rally on Wall Street, the Dow jumped 135 points, the Nasdaq 83, the S&P 24. Investors were relieved there was no escalation of tensions with North Korea this weekend. The man who runs Merck, Ken Frazier, quit the president's advisory council this morning because he felt President Trump did not condemn hate groups in Virginia strongly enough this weekend. Richard Trumka says the AFL-CIO, which he heads, is assessing its role in that council, which Trumka says has not yet held a real meeting. Google and GoDaddy have yanked the registration of the Daily Stormer. That's the neo-Nazi website that promoted the deadly event in Virginia. Netflix has hired the creator of Scandal, Shonda Rhimes, to come up with some new programs for its viewers. Netflix now spends about $16 billion on content. And Amazon's offering money back to customers who bought solar eclipse sunglasses on its site that may not work when that eclipse happens next Monday. Chuck Kamlick, CNBC.
At 6 a.m., 40 million Americans are waking up to a Gillette shave. And at our factory in Boston, 1,200 workers are starting their day building on over 100 years of heritage and innovation. Today, we're bringing you America's #1 shave at lower prices every day, putting money back in the pockets of millions of Americans. I'm proud to bring you Gillette quality for less because nobody can beat the men and women of Gillette. Go to GilletteOnDemand.com and get your 4th order free. Gillette, the best a man can get.
The key to success? Keep it simple.